The celebration was supposed to be uncomplicated, even if the proposal itself had been anything but. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, happiness is rarely planned far in advance. It erupts suddenly, impulsively, driven by emotion rather than strategy. That was precisely what made the engagement between Carter Walton and Daphne Rose feel so sincere. It was rushed, almost reckless, and yet profoundly moving because it was born from a moment of clarity rather than calculation. Carter had not proposed because everything was stable or certain, but because he believed that waiting would only invite fear to erode what felt true. Daphne accepted not because she was blind to the risks, but because the emotion behind the gesture felt real enough to outweigh them. Even the ring itself, a Forrester heirloom borrowed in haste rather than chosen with ceremony, symbolized that raw urgency. It was not ownership that mattered in that moment, but intention. For a brief span of time, the room aligned itself with that intention. Congratulations came easily, laughter softened the edges of doubt, and the future appeared to open itself without resistance. In those minutes, Daphne stood at the center of something rare in Los Angeles, a moment that belonged entirely to her. She was not a supporting figure, not a complication, not a name whispered in comparison to someone else's past. She was the present. Carter, standing beside her, felt an unfamiliar calm settle in his chest, the quiet reassurance that perhaps he had finally chosen something without leaving unfinished business behind him. It was a fragile calm, but it was real. That calm did not shatter with noise. It fractured with presence. The arrival of Quinn Fuller was not dramatic in the traditional sense. There was no raised voice, no theatrical announcement. Yet her entrance altered the emotional gravity of the room instantly, like a storm cloud sliding across the sun. Quinn did not need spectacle. History preceded her, and history is often louder than words. To Carter, her appearance felt like a sudden collapse of time, the past stepping forward without invitation or warning. To Daphne, it felt like a chill she could not explain, an instinctive awareness that something precious was about to be taken from her hands. Quinn did not come to make peace. There was no apology in her posture, no softness in her eyes. She came to deliver a truth as she defined it, one that she had clearly chosen to unveil at the precise moment it would do the most damage. She announced that she had given birth to a child and that Carter was the father. The words themselves were devastating, but the way they landed was almost surgical in its cruelty. Quinn did not raise her voice or linger on details. She simply stated the fact and allowed silence to do the rest. In that silence, celebration died. For Daphne, the shift was immediate and brutal. She did not move, yet she felt herself displaced, as though the ground beneath her feet had subtly rearranged itself to push her to the margins. Moments earlier, she had been the woman everyone looked toward with warmth and expectation. Now, eyes slid past her, toward Carter, toward Quinn, toward the invisible child whose existence suddenly seemed to outweigh her entire presence. Daphne became a witness to her own erasure, standing inside what was supposed to be her day while watching it reframe itself around a story that did not include her. Carter, meanwhile, discovered that shock is a luxury denied to men accused in public. His mind raced, but his body remained frozen, aware that every visible reaction carried meaning. To deny too quickly would suggest panic. To ask questions would imply uncertainty. To show anger would look like deflection. He understood with terrifying clarity that there was no neutral response available to him. In that moment, Carter was not being asked to defend himself. He was being tested. Quinn had constructed a trap where even innocence could look like guilt if expressed incorrectly. Internally, Carter was unraveling. His first instinct was to turn toward Daphne, to reach for her hand, to anchor her against the emotional shockwave rippling outward from Quinn's words. But he hesitated, realizing that even that gesture could be misinterpreted, seen as performance rather than sincerity. At the same time, a darker thought crept in, unwelcome and destabilizing. What if Quinn's claim contained truth he had never fully confronted? Carter had always believed he understood his past, that he had accounted for his mistakes and learned from them. The suggestion that he might have fathered a child without knowing it forced him to confront the possibility that some consequences cannot be managed, only discovered too late. Daphne's silence became its own language. She did not lash out, did not demand answers, did not collapse into visible grief. That restraint, rather than protecting her, made her pain sharper. She was processing not only the accusation itself, but the humiliation embedded within it. The most devastating realization was not that Carter might have a child, but that this revelation had stripped her of agency. She was no longer a participant in the conversation about her own engagement. She was an object of observation, a variable others assessed while deciding what mattered more, her future or Carter's past. Quinn watched this transformation with an unsettling composure. She did not look at Daphne with remorse, nor at Carter with nostalgia. Her focus was singular. This was not about reconciliation or accountability, it was about reclaiming relevance. Quinn had always refused to disappear quietly, and in this moment, she ensured that she would not be relegated to memory. By introducing a child into the narrative, she created a bond that could not be dismissed or erased, one that would follow Carter regardless of how the engagement unfolded. Even if Daphne walked away, even if Carter denied the claim, the question itself would linger, demanding resolution. The brilliance of Quinn's timing lay in its inevitability. She did not need proof in that moment. She needed doubt. Doubt, once planted, does not require maintenance. It grows on its own, nourished by speculation, by silence, by the uncomfortable pauses that now punctuated every interaction between Carter and Daphne. Quinn understood that the engagement ring, borrowed or not, symbolized continuity and promise. By unveiling her truth at that precise moment, she ensured that the ring would never again represent innocence. It would forever carry the weight of interruption. As the room attempted to regain its balance, it became clear that nothing could return to what it had been moments before. The engagement had not ended, but it had been fundamentally altered. Carter remained standing, his outward calm masking an internal reckoning that had only just begun. Daphne faced a choice that no one should be forced to make under public scrutiny, whether to hold on to a future now clouded by uncertainty, or to step away before her own identity became collateral damage in a story she did not author. What made the situation truly unbearable was the absence of a correct response. Carter could not defend himself without appearing defensive. He could not remain silent without allowing suspicion to calcify. Daphne could not demand clarity without being framed as insecure, and she could not project strength without suppressing legitimate hurt. Quinn had engineered a moment in which everyone else was required to suffer quietly while she stood untouched, having already achieved her objective. In the aftermath, one truth became impossible to ignore. Even if Quinn's claim were eventually disproven, the damage inflicted by its timing could not be undone. Trust, once destabilized, does not simply reassemble itself through logic or explanation. As Carter looked at Daphne, he understood that the greatest danger was not the existence of a child from his past, but the way the future he had just promised was now standing on ground that might give way without warning. The engagement, once fueled by urgency and hope, now carried the burden of proof, and neither love nor intention could guarantee that it would survive what had just been set in motion.